What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Van Aken, and today I'm joined by Marcus Stewart. How you doing, Marcus?
Hey, I see you, Alex Van Aken.
I see you.
Thank you.
Are you going to Erewhon? Awa?
One of those places. I mean, I hopefully not anytime soon.
Okay, but you've made the decision. You're going to Awa?
I mean, I think life makes that decision. I don't think. I mean, I guess you could. Now we're getting into dark stuff. Like, I guess I could choose to go there sooner if I'd like to.
Okay, well, Charles Hart is rounding out the podcast today. What's going on, Charles?
Hello. I would be so in the dark if I hadn't edited your Avatar video because I have not really seen those movies.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, I will not be going to Erewhon.
Okay, yeah. Me
Or
neither,
Awa.
actually. Yeah, for that matter, yeah. Welcome to the Game Informer Show. It's the Avatar Frontiers of Pandora cover reveal episode.
Woo!
Marcus and I flew to Sweden a month ago or so.
Yeah, last month, October.
Yeah,
like
last month.
early October. Yeah.
We had barbecue, really good barbecue. Well, that was in Copenhagen, Denmark. But the thing is, we're going to get into this in a second. They're connected by a train, and they didn't check our passports when we changed countries. So we were like going all over the place.
Yeah, for reference, we were in Malmo, Sweden, which is very, very close to Copenhagen. In fact, when I was looking up
train
travel,
stop away.
Yeah, when I was looking up travel, just tips, prepping for it, they mentioned Malmo was like a popular sort of weekend getaway for people that live in Copenhagen because it's so close and it's like a smaller town and it's got like a nice, chill vibe. So maybe that's why they didn't check our passports, because they're like, chill, we're cool here. You guys look trustworthy.
Yeah.
You got that trustworthy look about us. Like, you're not coming here to start some stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We weren't.
Is that also like, and I've never been to Europe, so I don't know. Is that like an EU thing? Like if you're going...
Not in my experience.
No, they did it when we came back.
Gotcha.
Remember, Alex, there was a lady that made the rounds then. So I don't remember if she checked us, but she did. She did not. She checked tickets.
She checked tickets,
but not passports.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than nothing, I guess. So shout out to her, nameless ticket checking woman, for, I guess, caring about her job. You're doing it big. Hold it down.
Good job. I feel like I kind of jumped the gun here. Welcome to the Game Informer Show. Today we're going to be talking about Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. It's the latest game to grace our magazine cover. I do want to say just off the bat, we're launching a cover story about a Ubisoft game, and a few hours after we revealed that, we found out that Ubisoft actually has laid off over 100 employees as of today, November 7th. This is according to IGN. The company laid off a total of 124 employees. And of course, just the latest in the round of layoffs this year. 98 of them were based in Canada, which is roughly 2% of the Canadian workforce. We have a whole news story written up by Charles. Just head over to gameinformer.com/news. You can read about it there. But I did want to call that out. I mean, we've got this. We're going to be talking a lot about a Ubisoft game today that's on our cover. I think it's our responsibility to also call out this really very shitty situation that has happened for Ubisoft employees. They deserve better. I am of the opinion that layoffs are always a failure of management and leadership, and so in this case, a failure of Ubisoft leadership. And yeah, I just wanted to start the show off that way. And, send condolences to all of the affected employees. If you'd like to reach out and talk, you can go to our masthead. You can email me, Alex Van Aken at gameinformer.com. We can do so securely. But yeah, I just, I think we have a certain responsibility to make sure that we are, calling this stuff out. especially when the game's on our magazine cover. That's yeah, it's a big responsibility, I think, and we don't work for Ubisoft. We covered their game. They worked with us. We worked with them to help get this cover story out the door. But yeah, that's really, really bad to hear. But yeah, we can move on. But I will link that in the show notes if you would like to read. We're also going to get into Talos Principle 2 today. Marcus has been playing that. It's the latest puzzle game that seems to be doing pretty well. I've seen a lot of people talk about it. I think it's doing pretty well critically as well. So I want to talk about that. We're going to be getting into Fortnite OG. Original Fortnite map is back. Charles and I have been playing it. And Warcraft Rumble, Blizzard's latest mobile game. I've been playing it for about 2 weeks. Interviewed some of the developers as well and have a fairly comprehensive understanding of the game. I really enjoy it. But with that all being said, Marcus, let's get into our cover reveal discussion on Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so we, like I said, we visited Massive Entertainment Studio in Malmo. Massive Entertainment, developer of the, best known as the developer of Tom Clancy's The Division, those two games, Ubisoft Studio, tackling this game, which I remember when they first announced it, it did make me raise an eyebrow. Like, that's not the team I would normally peg for something like this, of like a big open world sci-fi fantasy game based on a Hollywood IP. But I guess in some ways it does fit. One, because Massive, if you ever look at their portfolio, they actually have a pretty diversified sort of outputs. They've been around since like the early 90s. So, I mean, they even told us when we were talking to them, like, yeah, it wasn't weird for us because we're used to sort of, stretching our wings and doing new things every now and then. And it helps that they, this game has gotten a lot of Far Cry comparisons, and some of those valid. Massive actually helped make Far Cry 3, which some people don't maybe know. They weren't the lead studio on it, but they did assist on it. Like pretty much every big Ubisoft game, that's the case. But yeah, we got to go there, play a couple of hours of it in the Kinglore Forest, which is one of the game's 3 regions. And then we also got a hands-off exclusive tour of the other 2 regions, which is the Clouded Forest and the Upper Plains. Got to interview several key members of the design team, pick their brains about, how the game came to be. What was it like working with James Cameron's Lightstorm Entertainment, which is the production company that makes the Avatar films. And also just learning, like, what is it like to write a story that is canonical to the Avatar mythos, but it takes place on the other side of Pandora, so far away from the events of the first 2 movies, which means that you can't play this game and not have to watch over like roughly 6 hours of films to catch up to it. You can just jump right into here and not have to stress. And you're going to see a lot of that stuff doled out over the next few weeks through videos and written features on our website. We got a coverage hub set up, all that good stuff. But in terms of the trip itself, we got, like I said, we got to play it, and I had fun with it. Overall, I guess that's the short answer.
Me too.
I was more impressed with it maybe than I thought I would be going in the sense that it really does feel more like its own thing than either a Far Cry or any sort of like Ubisoft open world games. I feel like, I mean, we all, make the jokes or know the memes of like, we all have like expectations of what an Ubisoft open world game looks like now, of like, it's going to be riddled with icons. You're not even going to be able to see the landmass because there's going to be so many icons, and you're going to be climbing towers to reveal stuff. And I don't know, maybe a lot of microtransactions and stuff, and maybe all that good stuff. I mean, TBA on that last part, I don't know about that one. But in terms of the exploration, what I do like about this game is that they are going for a less guided approach, even like by default. So they have this beautiful 3D map. It's an open world game, first person only for the most part. And you're exploring this area called the Western Frontier, which is a whole new area that Massive has created in collaboration with Lightstorm. And like the films, it looks beautiful. Like the alien wildlife and all the flora, and just seeing all these weird looking plants, a lot of which you can interact with and do and kind of react to you in weird ways of like doing stuff like, I don't know, like flowers that dive into the ground when you walk up to them, and maybe some
Bounce
that are a little more,
caps.
yeah, like bounce cap. Like some of them are like gameplay focused of like, oh, this giant leaf can fling you really far.
Or there's a vine that you can shoot with an arrow, and it'll drop a spindle of sorts, and you grab
like
on
a
it.
rope.
Yeah, like grabs on you, pulls you up. And there's cool moments where you have to like jump off of a ledge, and then like just grab one of those, and it sucks you up.
Yeah, and what's nice about how alien everything is that it's all really identifiable in the world, and that's why they don't have as many icons. Like they want players to sort of like really get immersed in their surroundings and just look for things instead of being told explicitly like, here's a waypoint, here's exactly where you need to go. Just go there. There is some of that guidance, but it's significantly scaled back from what a lot of Ubisoft open world games have become. Like some of the missions were just like, hey, you know, here's the general area where your objective is. Like you need to go here, and then here's a description of what you're looking for. Like, oh, there's a big rock that has a bunch of willow trees all over it, and you're like, okay, that sounds pretty distinctive. And then you just, you know, you can fast travel or walk to that area, and then sort of like head in the direction of like, oh, it's east of the home tree, which the home tree, of course, is like, if you watch the movies, that's where like a clan is kind of like their home. That's where they all concentrate and live. So you're like, okay, I'm going to head west of there. And then I guess if I just keep hitting it, I should just hit the thing that they're describing. And then sure enough, you see it like rise out of the horizon. You're like, okay, that has to be the thing. Like that doesn't look like anything else around here. I like that. And that's in the default mode, but they also have an optional exploratory mode where you can remove almost every icon from the game and just go purely by sight if you're someone that prefers to like maybe immerse yourself in that Na'vi fantasy of like, yeah, I'm in tune with Pandora and AWA, and I'm just going to use my tracking skills and I'll figure it out, which is nice. For those that know, the general story is that this takes place kind of in the beginning of Avatar: The Way of Water. If anyone has seen that movie, you might remember early on in the beginning, there's a 1 year time skip from between when the RDA, which, you know, is the villainous human corporation that is trying to mine Pandora of all of its resources. They come back to start the war again, but then it jumps ahead 1 year, and then that's where the movie sort of follows. The game takes place during that 1 year time skip, of course, like I said, on the other side of the planet. So you'll hear references to Jake Sully and what's going on over there, but you're largely detached from, like, you're not going to have any effect on anything that's going over there. You play as a customizable hero. You know, you name them, and the idea is that you are a Na'vi, like a native Na'vi, not an avatar, who was part of a program that was led by a guy named John Mercer, who's the game's villain, who, like, basically during the RDA's original stay on Pandora, they were trying to raise Na'vi children as humans, where they had them come in, they taught them like, hey, human culture and how to speak English, and like, hey, our stuff is good, like metal and technology, it's great, because that stuff's very taboo to Na'vi. And the idea was sort of to use them to convince the natives to like, hey, give us some of those resources. And then if you watch the first movie, as that relationship between humans and Na'vi soured, it became a lot more antagonistic and, you know, just straight up open conflict happened. So then they said, screw it, how about we just train these kids to fight? And then they can basically be like our own sort of like homegrown super soldiers that are maybe more effective than using an avatar, because they're native Na'vi, and Na'vi are like superhuman in strength and agility. They're like 10 feet tall, all that good stuff. So like, hey, if we could teach them to be humans too, that'd be great. So when the first movie ends with the big battle that gets the RDA kicked off the planet, the program gets terminated, and you pretty much the order is like, oh, execute all these kids before they get set free. But you're saved by your teacher, who is like actually, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say, but let's just say you have a teacher who's overseeing the program, who's like really kind. She puts you and your friends in cryo sleep before you can get killed, and then you're spared from destruction. But then 15 years pass, and then you wake up at, like I said, that sort of early point during Avatar: The Way of Water. And now you're a Na'vi in this world, but you don't know anything about being a Na'vi because you were raised as a human. So a lot of the game is trying to reconnect with the Na'vi clans in the Western frontier to sort of learn not only their ways, but also learn what it means to be Na'vi, and also trying to recruit their help to fight against the RDA, who have found their way to the Western frontier and have, set up all these outposts and are polluting everything and are just making life miserable for everyone. So you're the person going around trying to be like, hey, we should rally and fight these guys. They're not good. Yeah. The combat, like I said, it's first person because you're a child of two worlds, as they say. You can use Na'vi weapons and human weapons. So on the Na'vi side, it's a lot of like bow and arrow stuff, like different types of bows that you
got like a sling that you can throw explosives with.
Yeah, it looks like a lacrosse stick, basically.
Yeah,
I think it's called the staff sling, but yeah, you use that to throw explosives. You have like a spear thrower thing, and the Na'vi weapons are generally better for stealth because they're quieter. And they're also great for hunting, when I'll get into that for a second. The human weapons, like you get like assault rifles, shotguns, grenades. There's an RPG you can get, probably some other stuff that you can find. Those are powerful, but they're loud, so maybe not great for sneaking. And also, they are not good for hunting. So this game has a full-on... It's got a lot of survival mechanics. It's like, in addition to just going around and fighting the RDA, you see them roaming around, you're taking them out with either type of weapon you want. But outside of that, you can hunt animals, you can kill them, you can craft them. This is where the Far Cry stuff comes in of like, I harvest their hides to make different types of gear and upgrade your weapons. You can also cook, and you got all these recipes that you can concoct. It's pretty much the Breath of the Wild, like Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda cooking, of like you just throw ingredients into a pot, and then whatever comes out is the recipe, and then food gives you certain buffs for a while. But you can also make disgusting food that you can't eat because you mixed in two things. You're like, I guess these weren't good. So it's very similar to the Zelda cooking. But the thing with hunting is that, like the films, the Na'vi are very in tune to nature. And this is actually one of my favorite things about the game, is how they're kind of nailing the source material, where if you hunt something using your Na'vi weapons, it's like good to eat, basically. Like if you take your bow, you can kill them, but if you kill them a certain way, the meat will be of better quality. So every animal has weak points that you can see with your Na'vi senses, which is basically if you hit a button, it's sort of like think of like a detective vision in most games, or like a survival vision of like it highlights enemies behind cover, or you can see like animal scent trails so you can follow them in the world. Like it's something like that, like basically a layer to reveal details about the world. And it'll reveal weak points in animals, and if you target those weak points, it'll kind of result in a clean kill as well as a merciful kill, which again, the Na'vi take killing very seriously. If you ever watch the movies, where everything that they kill, they do like their little prayer and say like, thank you, Awa, for returning you to the earth, and all that stuff. And you do all of that when you kill something, but if you shoot it with a gun, then you can't harvest it at all, because the Na'vi, like, metal is taboo.
Metal.
It's just no metal. So if you just, you gonna say, Charles?
I was gonna ask, do the other Na'vi that you interact with, if you have weapons that are human weapons, do they react to that? Like, is that a conversation you saw people have, or is it just kind of like, you do that, but we're not interested?
What's interesting in the films, it's in the first film especially, because I forget, you said you haven't seen the films? We were talking.
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the second one.
Okay, like if you remember in that film, they at that point, some, or at least the main tribe, they don't like it, but they come around on it, especially by way of water, because Jake sort of like is like, hey, we need these to kind of like stand a chance against them. So they come around to it, but it's not easy. And in this game, from what I remember, like some tribes distrust you anyway because of your upbringing with the RDA. They don't see you as one of them, and you kind of have to earn that trust. And a lot of that is because you're using human weapons. So some tribes react better than others, but there is like, it is a factor of like, oh, you're using their stuff. I don't know about that,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that it seems like there, from what I saw, like in conversations, that it's like a point of drama. But it also creates interesting combat opportunities where like some animals are aggressive and attack you, and killing them with human guns kills them faster. But then if you do that, then you're giving up the reward of harvesting them for parts. So it's like that split second of like, I could put this thing down real quick with a machine gun, but do I want to? Do I need parts from that animal specifically? Should I have used my bow? And I kind of like that. Again, because it's true to the IP, and it's like it's just a different approach to combat that I don't really think I've seen in the games. Like kind of that like not even risk reward, but there's like a downside to using a certain type of weapon. With all the crafting stuff, like Massive has kept saying that it was optional to engage with it, which I thought was interesting. I don't know what that means exactly, and it wasn't clear when we were there. Of like, I maybe optional in the sense that you don't have to get as nitty gritty as you could get with it. Because I found recipes for things, and definitely went out of my way to craft things. There's like crafting benches and stuff that you can find. I don't know if I found like fully made armor. I might have, but I might have forgotten. So maybe that's what they mean. Of like you can just find something that's better and not have to worry about making your own stuff. So I think that's probably what they're talking about. But the other thing with the game is that it's got like a parkour almost style platforming system where, like I mentioned, for the Na'vi, if you watch the movies, they're really fast. They're like running around, jumping off the little floating mountains, the Hallelujah Mountains and stuff like that. And you can do that kind of stuff, especially when you're getting your Banshee for the first time, the Ikron, which is like their flying dragon looking things. Like we did a whole mission where you have to get yours and bond with it. And so you have to climb these floating mountains, the Rookery, where they all hang out. And I thought that sequence was pretty fun. Like the first person platforming controls felt pretty good, especially because they didn't make it super obvious of like, this is where you need to go. These are the handholds that you can grab. Like, again, it's about like, you can tell what you need to grab, but it's not like in your face. You know what I mean? Sure. Like it feels like you're making those split second decisions and then feeling really cool of like, oh, I nailed that. I had a feeling I could grab that and I did it. But without feeling too like obscure. You got like a double jump where you have a regular jump. If you hold down the jump button, you'll do like this pretty high vertical leap showing off their jumping ability, which is nice because you can charge it while you're running. So you can kind of like prep it in advance of like, oh, I'm going to take this cliff and I'm going to go flying and it's going to look cool. And then I'm going to land on a big flower that makes me bounce. And then I'm going to grab a vine and shoot up. And if you're on your game, you can get like almost like a Mirror's Edge-ish sort of like momentum of like, oh, I'm just going and I'm not stopping and I'm just looking probably really cool to all the other Na'vi watching me, but like, oh, look at this guy, he's all right. And then getting your Banshee is pretty fun too. It's like, it becomes your flying mount for the game. It can't be killed because like in the films they bond for life. Like that is just your mount forever. So it's nice that they can't be killed in combat. You can call them anytime you want to fly around. And the flight controls felt surprisingly good and less cumbersome than I expected. So like flying is the only time the game shifts to third person. And like you're steering your Ikron, but you're also like you can aim and shoot. So you can get into firefights with like those RDA helicopters, kind of like in the films of like, oh, I'm going to shoot arrows at like the cockpit and see if I can blow these guys out the sky or shoot them with a gun. And what I like most about flying is that you can do some like, to quote Kyle Hilliard, some sick stunts. Like Alex and I were messing around a lot with that. Yep. Where Alex, your like signature move was like
the Battlefield 3, jump out of the jet and shoot the rocket at the other jet and jump back on your jet.
Yeah, you can absolutely do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as impressive because you can just like press a button to summon your Ikron back. But I was doing stuff like that where it's like, okay, I can't use my explosive sling on the Ikron, but if I fly high enough, I can jump off, throw my explosive with the sling, and then blow up what I need to blow up, and then just jump back on my Ikron. Like, it swoops down and grabs me, and I keep going. You can like hip fire and that sort of thing on the Ikron with like your bow and your machine gun. But if you want to use like that special item in particular, you need to do some trickery. So
you feel really cool too, as which is really important to Na'vi culture. I don't think they tell you that. Being cool. Yeah.
Are there places you can't fly? Like, to me, if I'm hearing about it, I'm like, I don't know why I wouldn't just fly that every conceivable place.
So the game is made up of 3 regions, right? And the story dictates where you go. Like, it's not you can go to anyone at any time. Like, you start in the Kingler Forest, which is the rainforesty looking area that it's pretty much the only area they've really shown.
It is massive, though.
Yeah, they've said all 3 regions alone are each bigger than both maps in the Division games.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that's just like each of them are bigger. So it's the biggest game they've ever made.
That's wild.
And they since the story dictates when you can go to the next one, the way they gate that, because I asked them like, well, what's stopping me from getting my Ecron? And they're like, I'm going to go to the upper planes right now. And they're like, apparently you have to, and throughout the game, you strengthen your connection to AWA, which for those that don't know, if you haven't seen the films, is basically part God, part like, if you're going to get scientific, it's like this planet-wide network that pretty much connects all life on the network. Like when you see in the film when they connect their hair to plants and stuff, that's them connecting to AWA, so to speak, the mother. And it's like, it's an important part of like becoming more Navi, I guess, whatever. But like you're going to be doing that throughout the game. Like there's these big flowers that you can find that you can connect to, and they basically award you a skill point. But like narratively, you've raised your connection to AWA, and it said bonding with your Ecron increases the more you connect to AWA, and then once your bond with your Ecron is high enough, it'll fly you to the other regions. Because the reason it can't do it now is that it always wants to kind of stay by your side and is like not willing to go that far just yet, until you get it to a point where it's like, yeah, I'll fly you anywhere, whatever, we're cool. Yeah. We're friends now. If you were an acquaintance, I would fly you maybe down the street, and that's about as far as it go. But now that we're like besties, yeah, we can go to like 50 miles away. Let's do it. So that's the explanation for it. But the other thing that's impressed me at this game is the way they've sort of made basic kind of survival mechanics a bit more involved in a way that fits the IP. So like you can harvest a bunch of different plants to make arrows for your bow, or to, like I mentioned before, do crafting, but you don't just pluck them out of the ground and walk away. Like you have to, like a lot of them have a mini game tied to them where you have to kind of position, like find the right place, like, oh, this is a good place in the stalk to rip it off cleanly. And it's like you're pretty much just like finding the right point in the analog stick where it'll vibrate. But like, oh, this is a good spot. But also like the time of day and the weather conditions matter, and not even just for plants, for animals too, where you'll see a flower and it'd be like, oh, if you pull this in the middle of the day when it's like sunny, it'll be good. But for whatever reason, this plant is at its best at nighttime. Like it's just something about the plant. Like if you pluck it at like in the moonlight, it'll be like super good quality. And so like you have to keep that in mind when you're harvesting stuff, because some missions will demand that you get a specific quality of an ingredient. Like there's like for example, some of the little villages have communal baskets that you can donate stuff to, where they'll be like, oh, we need like this fruit, but ideally we really only want the fruit if it's of high quality. And so the only way you know if it's high quality is that so there's like a scanning mechanic. So like everything you harvest or kill or whatever, you can scan, and it'll add to like this little menu database that tells you everything about it, about like, here's the conditions that you need it to be of a certain quality, here's where it's found in the world, like everything you need to find it. So you would maybe reference that and be like, okay, if I want this fruit to be of utmost quality, I'm going to look at that. It says I need to pluck it at midday. Okay, I'm going to head over there now. It's about that time of day, and I'm going to do that. I like that it's like not mindless. Like it, again, for like the Navi culture of like forcing you to be in tune with the environment and always be mindful of like, what time is it? Is it raining right now? I don't know if I want to do it when it's raining because it's going to make it bad, or it might make it better. It depends. But I like the thought that goes into harvest things. Again, it can feel mindless after a while. It's just like, I'm just going to pluck stuff and whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
The combat itself feels pretty good too. I don't know if it feels like amazing compared to other games, but it feels like good, especially when the novelty of being a 10-foot tall creature comes into play when you're fighting the comparatively small humans and you like melee attack them and they go flying. It feels nice. You're fighting them when they're in those mech suits, the AMPs, of which there's like new varieties of those in the games that we haven't seen in the films. Like some have like flamethrowers and some shoot like grenades, and
we did ask, can you like hijack those? And you cannot.
Which I guess would make sense because they're only made for tiny people. I guess
that's their reasoning. Yeah, I mean it's a good narrative reason.
Yeah, because physically they could not be fitting those things.
Yeah, Alex, you sound dissatisfied.
Yeah, like
just sound like
you could
really
just make them bigger.
Yeah, but I guess narratively, why would the humans make them to fit Avatar people?
It's a video game.
I do like the idea of they have some that are spray painted blue that are for their avatars.
I guess they could do that, but then the whole point of being an avatar is that you have all the super strength stuff. So you're like, oh, you don't need this too.
I just think I would look cool in a mech.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe there's a point in the game where they're like, we need to make you a mech suit, and then I don't know.
I don't know, it's like Iron Man style suit up. But, this is fan fiction now. This is nothing. This is not in the game.
But a lot of the combat in our demos was concentrated on clearing an outpost. So again, going back to Far Cry, there's a bunch of RDA outposts everywhere. Some are bigger than others, and they all affect the environment because they are stealing from the earth and they are polluting. That means any wildlife or plant life within the area of the factory is unharvestable until you clear it. So that's what gives you incentive to be like, oh, there's a plant here that I need, but it's like polluted and nasty, and I can't pluck it until I get rid of this outpost. You can go in, guns blazing if you want, or you can stealth your way through it. I think stealth is interesting in this game because you're so big. You can't hide behind things that you normally would as a person because you're just so much taller. And so but the environment is, or at least the base that we were in, it's kind of scaled up because they have so many of those guys in mech suits walking around that they have to have things that fit those guys. So it kind of gives you the architectural conceit for why you can also maybe fit in this hallway because it has to be big because they have to patrol. But beyond that, there's like a fun novelty in being this big creature sneaking around and plucking dudes off with these arrows that are, again, to them are basically like flagpoles that you're shooting at them. But it felt good. It feels challenging too. Like both times we played this section, I noticed that, there's like an alert status and stuff when you get caught, but it never ever fully defaulted back to normal when you disappeared. They were always in some mild state of awareness, which I personally liked as a realistic touch of like, well, yeah, they're not going to instantly forget that I exist because they haven't seen me for a while. Like they assume that I'm nearby, but they're not as like freaking out. But now they're like the element of surprise is gone. You know what I mean? And I kind of like that they don't just reset and are just idiots and go back, to whatever they were doing. There, like the outpost we did, there was like a bunch of objectives kind of like scattered about. You could do them in any order of like, oh, sabotage this thing and turn this thing off and whatever. And then how you do that is up to you. One fun trick that I like going back to your Banshee is that since you can call it anytime, it's a good distraction. Like I called it in at one point, and then like everyone in the base near it freaked out and started shooting at it, and that allowed me to kind of slip around because they just see like a dragon thing and they're like, oh my god, shoot that thing, and you're like, all right, buddy, and it can't die, so it's kind of exploiting that of like, yeah, you can take all those bullets, buddy. I'm gonna sneak around the back, hold them busy, or you can just use it and fly and try to get your objective that way, assuming they haven't called any helicopters. I don't know. It just seemed like there was a fun number of options for tackling that base, which I always appreciated. But I'm curious, Alex, you played the same demo I did a good bit of it. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I probably got a total of probably 4 or 5 hours hands-on, repeat content, but because we played it twice.
Right.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think the bow feels really good. Really good like player feedback and like sound design and UI elements, like when you hit those headshots on humans in particular, like it just feels really good. I know some like bow and arrows I feel like in games can sometimes feel like weightless in a way,
Yeah.
And it just has like a really nice heft to it. I prefer it honestly to like the assault rifle.
I did too, and a lot of that was me role playing too.
Me too, yeah, yeah.
I feel like this character is gonna not use human stuff as like unless it's a last resort because they're trying to prove themselves. Like, no, I'm a Navi. I can do things your way.
Absolutely. But yeah, I really appreciated that. Like, I kind of tended to gravitate towards stealth, and it was like I felt like the game accommodated that. In both in the open world and in like those big bases, right?
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the hunting as well, like hunting the big animals and tracking their scents. And again, kind of requires, if you want to harvest the best resources from the carcass, like you're really like more inclined to to use stealth and get a clean kill with the bow and that sort of thing. And I'm very down with that. I like it a lot. I also enjoyed the kind of, seems like there's a fair amount of like talents in the skill tree. I want to say there was 4 or 5.
There's like 5 different, like one of them is
Yeah.
dedicated just to your banshee.
Yeah.
Like skills for that thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's one for like combat, one for hunting, one for crafting, and one for, I want to say stealth, I think. But yeah.
I don't know. The world has so many vistas as well, that are really, really fun to explore and find. And often in places that you wouldn't expect them to be. The environment artists and the level designers at Massive have really put together, it really transports you, Frontiers of Pandora does. And there are just many moments where I was just kind of blown away by how it looked. That being said, like I think the game's solid. I don't know if this sort of open world is ultimately going to hold me for the entirety of the game. That's just because like it really takes a lot for me to finish an open world, right? But like I kind of like that it's broken up into 3 worlds with 3 distinct like I can, when I'm in the upper planes, I have to essentially be on what is the equivalent to horseback, right? And that
the dire horse.
The dire horse, that changes how I explore versus being able to fly places, right?
Yeah. And that was one thing that the creative director, Magnus Jansen, was telling us about, like how contrast was kind of a big thing with designing the world, where like each region is completely different from the last one. Like the upper plains is more open, hilly grasslands, and the mountains, and or not mountains, but like grasslands, windy. The clouded forest is like this really mysterious, often foggy forest that has mountains and stuff. And it's not even just like the broader strokes, but because a lot of the plant life is brand new plant life that Massive created and is now canon to the Avatar sort of like Bistari or whatever. What is the equivalent of like a plant version of like a Bistaria? A plant encyclopedia?
Compendium?
Sure. Yeah, like the Avatar lore Bible, basically. The world building Bible. Like a lot of their new plants and stuff is now part of that. So who knows? Maybe we'll see it in the other movies. But and this was something I think blew both of our minds, Alex, where Magnus was telling us how they've gone to the, like they care so much about contrast, where like they have even redesigned like familiar elements that appear in all 3 worlds even look different. Like, oh, there's always going to be those launch flowers in each region, or there's like little flowers that you can step on and give you a speed boost while you're running. But they'll even look different in the other worlds, where like they won't look different enough to where you have to retrain your brain to be like, oh, this is the thing that I've gotten used to seeing. Like I think they said it might just be a different color, but it'll still be the same shape, where like you'll see it and be like, okay, I think I know what that is. But they logically, they're like, well, it would make sense that this looks different because this is a different climate, even if it has the same function. And like, so then for them to go to like that painstaking degree of basically making new assets for things that have the same function, just to make them feel as distinct from each other as possible, I thought was kind of wild.
Yeah, me too. It definitely is. Just looking at it, it's a lot of work. But it was exciting to see, because like those are the details that like keep you wanting to explore a world when you feel like there are still new things to find, even though it is familiar.
And gameplay implications too. Like he mentioned in the Clouded Forest, where like only in that region when you're hunting, there's this species of insects that are like swarm, and they basically like locusts, where like, oh, if you kill something and they're around, they will swarm your kill, and if you don't harvest it quick enough, they'll eat it and spoil it. And that's only in the Clouded Forest. So even when you think you have hunting down, once you go there, you have to now like adopt that into your strategy of like, oh, these things are around, I got to keep an eye out for those. And like other gameplay changes that come with the environment is pretty cool.
Seems exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing more when the game comes out next month, but it was
exactly a month, at least from when we're recording.
It was a ton of fun going to to Malmo to Massive. They have probably one of the nicest studios I've ever been to.
Yeah, new studio too. They haven't been there that long.
Yeah.
A couple of years, like barely 2 years.
I think so. Yeah. And ultimately, you know, I did enjoy the game. I really enjoyed meeting the people who are making it. But yeah, Marcus, any other things we need to touch on before we take a quick break and move on to more games we've been playing?
Yeah, I would say overall, like I wouldn't call myself the biggest Avatar fan. Like I like those movies well enough. You know, I watched.
I like the character designs a lot, particularly the mechs.
A lot of it is like I like the artistry and the thought that goes into making that world, especially if you watch any of those behind the scenes documentaries. Like it's fascinating with like how everything has to be based on like it has to have either a real life analog or like has to be based in some form of reality before they dial it up to 11 just so they can scientifically justify why this flower has like 10 tentacles and does all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you see like James Cameron just so anal about that stuff, and they've taken that same approach for this game. But like the story is the thing I'm most curious and maybe apprehensive about with the game, and I think there's a lot of that. It's like that's probably the biggest criticism of the films. It's like, oh, everyone loves looking at those movies and think it looks stunning, but like the story is like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not bad. I don't think the stories in those movies are bad. It's just like, none you haven't seen before. Pollution's bad. Don't be jerks. Family. Blah. It doesn't really do too much interesting with that. I think the second film is more interesting for sure. But I want to see like if the game bucks that trend a bit and maybe has I don't know, like surprises me with the storytelling a little bit more than the films do.
Yeah, me too. And I'm very.
And we didn't really get a sense of that with the demo.
Yeah, and I'm also curious if
context missions.
Sorry. I'm curious if they can do that like under the wing of Lightstorm. That is kind of, working with them. Like, how far can you depart in terms of like the style of storytelling? That remains to be seen, I think.
Because I even asked them about the villains. It was like, the movies, the villains are almost cartoonishly evil. Like, there's not a lot of nuance. It's like, no, these guys are terrible. And it sounded, and I was like, is that going to be addressed, or like, were you able to add any more nuance? And
they were like, no.
Short answer was no.
Yeah.
So we'll see there, but yeah, I'm curious to see how that story stacks up to the two films.
Yeah. Well, cool. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about Talos Principle 2, Fortnite, and Warcraft Rumble. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Game Informer show. Let's get into, I know we're going to go to Talos Principle 2, Marcus, but I want to give Charles the chance to be in the limelight, as it were. Charles,
hanging in the limelight, the universe.
You've
Rush
been
fans,
playing. Hold on, this tie. I feel like it's making me. This tie is making me.
Yeah, Alex is wearing a tie for audio listeners.
It's making me a little too stiff, Let me just.
Whoa, Alex, calm down.
Oh, 2 buttons.
Whoa.
Can we do one more? Oh, we can.
He's taking the buttons off.
Yeah,
oh my
all
god.
right.
He's literally ripping the buttons off of his shirt.
I felt like I was corporate Alex for a second. Back in my old days as corporate America Alex, I just was feeling stifled, and I needed to shed this energy, and I just did.
Did you do that when you quit your corporate job? Or you're like, I'm out of here, and you ripped your shirt off?
No, I got in the car and cried after I got laid off. But thanks, Marcus, for bringing that up, dude.
What a
really
mood.
appreciate that. Charles, you've been playing Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. Is that the title, the full title?
That's correct.
A lot of keywords.
That's a good one. Have you read my review, Alex?
I read your
headline.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, my headline is a slime fight in the limelight.
Yeah, it's good.
Very
for
good.
people listening, thank you.
So how is this slime fight? Please tell us.
Good and slimy, which is to say, good.
How many slimes out of 10?
3 slimes out of 3, because that's as high as the slime meter goes.
How many sticks?
Actually, wait, no, that's not true. I didn't give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, but on the Game Informer reviews.
8 slimes out of 10.
Okay.
Yes, it's a good game. For people that aren't familiar, it's kind of like it's a platform fighter, so it's a Smash Bros like Combines a bunch of characters from the Nickelodeon channel, and it's pretty wide spanning in its time frame of like when the characters show up. So you got some like Hey Arnold in there. You got I don't even know
SpongeBob.
Of course, SpongeBob. I don't even know the full name of it. But it's
Jimmy
Tigre.
Neutron. Oh yeah, El Tigre, who no one talks about.
Charles, I have one question before you keep going.
Please.
Is there voice acting in this video game?
There is. So
Like
there is voice acting.
actual? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they, for people also that aren't aware, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 1, fine game. Kind of the general consensus is like the bones are here, but it's kind of lifeless because it launched with missing a few features that seem kind of crucial for this. One is I believe it had no items, and two, there was no voice acting. So it was just like this silent Avatar Aang fighting a silent SpongeBob in a void with some like vaguely upbeat music in the background. Really weird. They added voice acting to that game eventually. They patched it and they updated it. This game launches with voice acting, which is one of those funny things where it's like, I don't know, not usually a thing you're excited about, but here it's like, thank goodness there's voices in this. And for the most part, they actually got like the voices. So you got like Tom Kenny SpongeBob. That's the only voice actor I could think of off the top of my head.
Is Helga from Hey Arnold still in it? Because she was in the first one.
She is not. So that's an interesting thing also, is there's 25 characters in this game. All-Star Brawl 1 ended after all DLC and updates with 25 characters. Only 14 of those 25 have come over to the new game. And so they've replaced 11 characters. So there's a number of characters. Like Cat Dog is gone.
No.
Helga's gone.
Wait, is there any Hey Arnold representation at all? Did they replace Helga with somebody?
So I haven't watched Hey Arnold, but going by the art style, Gerald.
Okay, Gerald's fine.
And is Gertie, is she from Hey Arnold also?
That's right, they added Grandma, yes.
Okay, yeah.
What a weird pick that was.
I gotta go look at this now.
I forgot. I watched the trailer for her when they announced her and was just like, really?
Yeah. They added Angry Beavers.
Yeah, I love Angry Beavers.
1997 show.
Both of them? Like both?
Yeah, it's like you can switch between the two of them.
Is that like a
one
Pokemon
character.
or like Ice Climbers situation?
I haven't personally played as them, but I think it's more Pokemon trainer than Ice Climbers. Meanwhile, Ren and Stimpy are still in it. They're kind of like a Duck Hunt combo there.
Okay, makes sense.
Squidward is here now. That was a notable exception from the first game. But Sandy has been cut.
Wow.
So it's kind of an interesting thing. I don't have a particular attachments to a lot of the characters, so for me it doesn't really bother me.
Sorry,
it's kind of nice.
Nigel's in this game?
Yeah.
He was in the first one too.
They did cut Jimmy Neutron's dad, but they added Jimmy Neutron. So
which I thought was hilarious, because Hugh Neutron was DLC for the first one, but like the idea that he went in before the main character purely because the internet loves him so much, I thought was just such a funny thing.
Anyways, the game itself is fun. It's good. It's very Smash Bros. Like. I think the main difference that you would feel if you're playing it is that smash attacks are a different thing called charge attacks, and they have their own button. So now you have like 3 buttons you can attack with. You've got your light attack, your special attack, and your charge attack. And that means like charge attacks do different stuff in the air. So now there's like light aerials and charged aerials, which can be cool. And then the big addition in this game compared to the last game is a slime meter, which works like meter in a lot of other fighting games. You can use it for defensive stuff. So instead of like your shield depleting over time, you can spend some slime and it stays up longer. You can spend slime and make your attacks, like special attacks will have different effects, like SpongeBob's neutral special, he just blows a bubble. If you slime it, it's like a bunch of bubbles that go out. And then there's also like some like more advanced stuff. There's a thing called a slime burst where you can spend slime to stop your momentum. So if you get launched really far, you can slime burst and like freeze yourself before you go off stage and then recover, which is cool. And I think it's cool. It feels when you're playing it, I don't think it feels as approachable as like a Smash Bros. Not to just keep comparing to Smash Bros. I think that's most people's familiarity with the genre. I don't think it's as approachable, but it's similar. But there's a lot of opportunities for like really high level play, and that's one of my criticisms of the game. Is I do wish it had a little bit more of a comprehensive tutorial section. Like there's a how to play section, and it tells you how to do basic stuff in the game, like this is a special, this is how you dash, this is whatever. And at the very end it's like, also you can do these 4 things with slime, just press A real quick and then you'll get those out of the way, and now you know how to play. And I'm like, wait, no, that's the hardest part. That's definitely the thing I want like a proper tutorial for. Yes. And then the last thing is slime meter, which I think most people are going to use it for, because when I was playing the game, I'm not like a super hardcore fighting game person, so I wasn't using it for the slime meter for most stuff. If you get 3 segments full, you can do like your ultimate attack, your final smash, if you will. And that's like a big, cool, cinematic, character-specific ability. And I mentioned this in my review. They're kind of hit or miss. Some of them are really cool. And a lot of them are good inside jokes. What's the coolest?
That you've seen.
I don't know Ren and Stimpy very well. I think they're kind of gross, to be honest. Confession.
That's pretty much the defining characteristic of the show. It's very gross. And how were we allowed to watch this as kids?
I don't like looking at them, but I did go through all those final smashes in like the training area. There's this like Stimpy gets a phone call. Is Stimpy the scrawny one?
Stimpy's the cat, the red one.
Okay. Stimpy gets a phone call and hears something and gets offended and then presses a button and like nukes half of the planet or something like that. And it's like, that's great. That's huge. He just got mad and threw a huge bomb at something.
Yeah. It's like the Cyrax finish in Mortal Kombat 3.
Yes. Whereas like Azula from Avatar: Last Airbender, who's a character I played as the most. Oh yeah. She's great. Her thing is she just says like, let me show you real power, and then she gets really big and throws like one fireball. And
I'm like, that big? Like she grows?
Well, it's like in a void, it like cuts away to a little cut scene.
Okay.
And then it comes back and then it all happens. So she gets really big and shoots a plume of fire down, and like that's the whole thing. And that's one where I'm like, 1, it's not cool, and 2, it's not really character specific to me. Like I feel like that's the point of like you can really get creative and stretch like what these characters are capable of.
Yeah, I think her finisher should have been having a really wild emotional breakdown where you kind of feel bad for her.
Yeah. She should lose it. I think that'd be super funny. I do her losing animation like after the game is done and you have all the people lined up after they lost. There's like a particular animation in the show when she's defeated for the last time where her arms are behind her back and she's kind of just like spitting fire into the air from her mouth. Like that rocks. That's what that is.
Okay.
So anyways, basic game feels good to play. There's also new single player modes, including a roguelite campaign.
Okay.
And I was kind of apprehensive at first because I was like, I don't know exactly how this is going to work. It's also like kind of a trendy thing to do, and I wasn't sure if it was going to make sense or if it was just going to fit in the trend. And there's elements of it I didn't like, but I think overall it is enjoyable. It's especially got that kind of power crawl feeling of by the end I had unlocked so many like long-term upgrades. In my last run when I was like completing the story, it was a thing where every time I did an air attack, I would become invincible for like 3 seconds. Anytime I gave someone a debuff, I would heal 30%, which is absurd. That's so much health. And every time I hit someone, I would poison them. So I was just constantly healing myself. No one could do any damage to me.
You can use any character for this?
So it starts out with SpongeBob, and then Patrick gets abducted by Vlad Plasmius, who's a villain from Danny Phantom. And then Clockwork, who's a different ghost from Danny Phantom, calls SpongeBob and he's like, yo, I need you to go through this universe and help save all these people. And And so as you encounter people, I think this is how World of Light works. Of you find like a possessed version of the character, and then if you defeat them, you can play as them in a later run.
Okay.
So you start out with just SpongeBob, and then the first encounter is always Patrick, and then after that it's randomized. So I think like for me, it took a long time. I'm glad I got the characters I want kind of early. There was definitely one character I didn't get, Ember from Danny Phantom. I didn't get her until like my very last run, so I never had like the opportunity to play her. But I was mostly playing as Azula because I like her a lot.
It was great.
The thing I didn't like about it is the story is really bad. It's
I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's not only like nonsense. Like I would expect it to be like kind of a stupid excuse to just get all these characters together, and I'm like, that's fine, whatever. And it was particularly annoying where it will set a goal for you. And it's like, you just have to defeat this guy. And then you defeat him and it's like, oh, I totally forgot. He has the invincibility juice on him. So here, take this. Now I want to have the invincibility juice. And then you go beat him again. It's like, oh, I forgot. That was actually a clone this whole time. But I wanted to test you to make sure you'd be ready for the real. Okay, now fight the real guy. Oh, my. And it does that like 5 or 6 times to the point where it's like,
Oh boy.
I don't really feel the need to pay attention to this anymore. But it's fun, which is more important than I think the story making sense.
Yeah, they should have gotten the Avatar showrunners to write the story.
They should have.
They're not busy, probably, right?
No.
And then I guess the last thing, speaking of Avatar, so they got voice actors. I looked at the cast list at the end because I was curious. My Nickelodeon attachment, I'm mostly interested in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra. Those are my preferred shows. But none of those characters have the correct voice actors, which was disappointing. Now, Aang's voice actor, I believe, like retired after voicing Aang. So that's
really?
like, that's fine. Yeah, he doesn't really do anything now. Azula is really interesting because her voice actress actually voices a different person on the cast, but doesn't voice Azula.
Wait, what?
It's Gray. I can never remember if it's Delisle or Griffin because I know it changed.
So she voices another character in the game, but not
correct.
But not her character.
Correct. Well, she voices. I think she voices. It's like a shopkeeper. It's a character from LT Gray.
Okay. LT Gray was a little after my time, so I never really watched it. I was aware of it, but
yeah, Frida Suarez is who Gray Delisle voices. So she is a voice actress in the game, but doesn't voice Azula, which like kind of bothered me. And then Korra's voice actress isn't there.
I feel like out of those two characters, like who do we get her to voice? Who's the more iconic one? I again, no disrespect to LT Gray. I feel like Azula would be the one if we can only get her for one.
I think the reason is, and I don't know exactly how this would have worked out, but this is published by Game Mail Entertainment. They recently published an Avatar: The Last Airbender game, and the person that voices Azula in that game is also the one voicing Azula here. So I don't know how that worked out. I don't know if maybe they were like, hey, now that we have you for this, can you also do this? I guess we'll ask Gray Delisle if she's free. And then she like was. And it's like, oh, we already gave someone. I don't know. That's pure speculation. But yes, I think that mostly covers it. Awesome. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Good game.
8 slimes out of 10.
8 slimes out of 10. 8 slimes out of 10 slimes.
Yeah,
sorry. Thank you.
Pizza. Game Mail, if you're listening to this, may I suggest for if you do a third one of these, can we get more live action show representation? Like, I want you to get. Can we get some Pete and Pete in there? Some like Keenan and Kel, perhaps?
You want like iCarly?
I want them to get. I want like. Even
all that?
Yeah, put Nick News in there. Like, I want to see Linda Ellerby throw down from Nick News, or the old obscure shows like Space Cases and the live action Animorphs show that was on Nickelodeon. Hey Dude, throw it all in there.
That would be really fun. And it's like animated like the old Mortal Kombats where they just took a bunch of pictures of real dudes.
Just digitized D&D.
Yeah.
But it's like we can't, it has to be like current day, like so it's like adult Kenan Thompson.
Okay.
Was Degrassi was Nickelodeon, right? Didn't that air on Nickelodeon?
Charles is
Maybe
looking.
only in Canada. I was gonna say, can we get Wheelchair Drake in the next game? Yeah, he's like, what was his character name in Degrassi that was in the wheelchair?
Can I ask, was he did he stay in the wheelchair the whole time?
I didn't watch enough Degrassi to tell you.
I never watched Degrassi, but I know enough about it that it's the kind of thing where like he got in a wheelchair and it lasts for like a season before something happens. I don't know.
He finds the will to stand up one day.
Wow.
He just instantly cured.
I can't find it. Definitely aired on Nick at Night at some point.
Okay.
Okay.
Or Teen Nick.
Bro, Nick at Night. I know those aren't technically Nickelodeon characters, but they were like I Love Lucy in All-Stars 3. Nick, and then the stage is black and white. I want Nick at Night representation. Let's do it. Wow. Dick Van Dyke Show. Dick Van Dyke versus Linda Ellerby.
This is a really good this is like an alternate version of, because there's a Multiverses, which is all like the Warner Brothers owned stuff.
Right.
Nickelodeon is like Viacom CBS, like they own a ton of stuff. I like the idea of them licensing all like the old shows.
You know, there's a certain time when CBS owned Giant Bomb. They could have thrown them in there technically.
I did not know that.
They could have. Brad Shoemaker could have been fighting a Ninja Turtle back in the day.
Wow. They did cut Leonardo and Michelangelo, but they added Donatello and Raphael.
Well, it's only fair. They gotta get a turn. Yeah.
Well, Marcus, tell us about the Brawler of the Mind, Talos Principle 2.
Hey, do you guys like feeling smart?
Yeah.
And maybe at the same time dumb?
Less so, but sure.
Because this game is good at both of those things. Did either of you play the Talos Principle, the first one, back in 2014?
No.
But I actually have no idea what this is.
Okay.
I'm familiar with it, though.
Okay, so I did. I love the Talos Principle. Well over a decade ago since I last played it. Or not over, but close. Basically, the game is it's a puzzle game where you play as a robot in a world where humanity has gone extinct due to a virus that was unleashed due to global warming. And basically, I'm summing up a lot of lore, but basically what happens is that everyone died out. But before that happened, a scientist lady gathered the whole of human knowledge and culture and philosophy and basically made a simulation where these robots would, over a long period of time, run these simulations and basically become humanity's successors because they would accumulate that knowledge, and then they themselves would start a new society where they were essentially human, but not really, And the way they did this is that the simulation would put multiple robots through these puzzle challenges, and you would be guided by this, this voice called Elohim, which was basically an AI. And the idea, and this is me mostly summing up the first game, but the idea was you're challenged to rebel against Elohim because he's telling you what to do. But throughout the game, you get this choices where you can kind of go the opposite way. And the only way you would pass the simulation truly and graduate to okay, you can live in the new world now, is that you would have to go against Elohim's commands, because the only way to prove yourself was to show that you were capable of independent thought. So this game takes place 1,000 years after the first game. So you don't have to play it if you don't want to. It takes a long time. So you are in the new world, there's this new city called New Jerusalem that is occupied by 999 of these sentient robots that are, again, humanity's successors. And you are the 1,000th robot born, and also the final one to be born, because there was a prophecy, or a command rather, from the woman that set this whole program up, hey, the robots, you're going to make this new society, but because to sort of learn from humanity's mistakes, one of the things that, but humanity's hubris is that we expanded too much. We believed in infinite growth in a finite planet, and so to maybe stop that, create 1,000 of you, and then when you get to 1,000, you're done. Just don't make any more of you. So you're that 1,000 person. Everyone's hailing you as like, oh, we did it. We recognize like this whole mission statement, or this like the whole mission is called the goal. So it's like, oh, you fulfilled the goal. Now what do we do? And everything's hunky dory until like at your big celebration, there's this big, basically you get this projection of this human like god pretending like posing as Prometheus, saying like, hey, go to this island, there's something near for you. And again, all these robots have lived in this basically dome city for centuries, and they have learned to like, okay, stay in your dome, don't expand, just this is it, we got everything we need here. And now you have this weird digital projection of a Greek god saying, hey, there's this island over here, you should go see what's over there. So you join this expedition to go see what's over there, and that's where the bulk of the game takes place. Like the first game, the puzzles unfold as basically these light puzzles where you're guiding one light to a node to basically open up the exit. And so you're guiding lights with mirrors. It's pretty much basically like the first game, but there's like these new types of mirrors where a lot of it relies on color, where like you can only guide a blue light to hit a blue lock, so to speak. But then sometimes it gets complicated where you have to guide different types of lights, and then if they have to go a certain direction because lights can't cross each other. So if they intersect, they'll cut each other off. So you have to find ways around that. And then it gets more interesting as they introduce different types of mirrors, where there's like, oh, one mirror that just transports the light across. But now here's an RGB mirror where it mixes colors, where like you have a red, blue, and green lock. If you combine two colors in this specific type of mirror, then it produces the third color. So if you want green, you need this combined red and blue, and then figure out how to navigate a puzzle from there. There's another one that, another new one is like an inversion light, where whatever light you send through it, it produces the opposite of it. So if you send a blue light, it's going to produce a red light. And then combining those with the other mirrors to try to figure out how to get past these obstacles. It's really fun. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the first game because I think the puzzle design was like immaculate, and then the story and the sort of philosophy behind it was interesting. And this game so far, I haven't finished it yet. I'm like almost done with the third sort of like island. It's on. I got a ways to go, but I'm in it basically, and I'm enjoying it so far. It's a lot bigger than the first game was, because the first game was pretty much just like, from what I remember, it's a little fuzzy, but it was pretty much just like you were in one setting and you were just going through a series of puzzles. Whereas this, you not only have the different sort of like sub hubs that you travel between, because you have like a train that you're riding to get to the next batch of puzzles that are all set in their own little open hub area that not only have the puzzles, but there's also these optional sort of things to find, where like there are these collectibles called Prometheus fires that basically allow you to skip puzzles if you find them. Like you can just feed it into a terminal and it'll just solve it. So you can be like, this is too hard, I'm just going to solve it. But I don't know what the ramifications are of that yet. I've only done it once just to see what it did, and I'm wondering if there's going to be like any sort of storytelling ramifications. There's like these different statues that you can find scattered throughout that each have their own sort of like self-contained environmental puzzle. Like one is where you have to find a digital swarm out in the world and then guide it back to that statue by sort of running and chasing it, and then keeping it going until it gets back to the statue holding a torch, and then you get like this collectible spark thing. There are these hidden labs that you can find in each one, and finding those not only gives you the schematic to access the next hub world, but also just more lore notes, of which there is a lot of lore notes you can find as you're trying to find out the origin of this weird sort of place that you're in, because again, the robots have gone centuries believing that they were the only civilization out there, and then they find this superstructure out somewhere with all this sophisticated tech, and they're like, how did this get here? Who on earth could have made this? And then also just like a lot of the storytelling so far is like you interacting with this small research team, of which they all have their own personalities, but also their own belief systems, because again, they've been conditioned by like human knowledge, and then a lot of them are very much like humanity. You have their own disagreements about like, okay, we should stick to the goal. Like we can't expand past 100,000 people because that's what led to our ancestors destroying the earth, because they thought unlimited growth was okay. But then now there's people in the community that are kind of like, well, maybe we should have more. Like, what's the problem? Like, there's these in the beginning, and I recommend people do this. Like, before you set out on the big adventure, you're free to explore New Jerusalem and just sort of walk around. And there's a bunch of museums of like human artifacts of like, oh, this is a toilet on a display spinning around, and it's like their description of like, oh, humans would dispose their excrement in here, and they had a very sophisticated sewer system. That's odd. Which I'm always like a sucker for that stuff of like post-apocalyptic media where future people try to figure out the purpose of things that we have now. Like there's an electric toothbrush in there, and they are like, we have no idea what this is. Like their guesses are like, it might have been some sort of ceremonial tool. And I've always loved that because I've learned to take any sort of historical artifacts we have with a grain of salt. Because it's like, I bet there's things that we assign so much meaning that back in the day was like the most mundane thing. But we don't know unless there's like documentation or whatever explaining what it is. We're sort of doing our best to guess. And I'm a sucker for that. I love history in general, but like exploring that and getting to talk to the other random robots opens up these interesting conversations because there's a lot of choice-driven dialogue. And by choices, like you have a lot of choices. Like it's usually at least 5 or 6 responses, but sometimes it's like up to 8 or so. And it's just like, a lot of it's just like, hey, what's your perspective about the nature of life? Like I talked to one guy who was, and again, these are all robots and they all have like numbers. Like you can see their number on their chest, which gives you an idea of how long they've been around. Of like, oh, if you're like number 100 and you've been here a long time. But one guy's like, oh, I'm just kind of depressed because I want to find love, but like I've been around here long enough, right? You know, because everyone knows each other. I know that I'm not like into anyone basically. And it's sad because now that you're born, there will never be another new person, you know? And you can kind of choose to respond of like, because he asked like, what do you think about that? Like, is it okay to love, or what do you think about love? And you can say like, oh, maybe you should focus on loving yourself, or I believe love should be built and not found, and you know, all these different responses. But it's like an interesting thought of like, yeah, what would it be like to live in a world where like there's a hard cap on society of like population, and you know that you're not interested in anyone else for whatever reason. You're like, that's it. There's never going to be any new people ever. And you're like, huh, that's an interesting. And a lot of questions, like, at least for me, they get you thinking. And also, I think they highlight that there's really no wrong answer. It's sort of like, what do you think? And then that person might disagree, but that's more because of their personality might be at odds with yours, or they just believe differently. And that's something I like, where it's like, you're not choosing the right answer, you're just choosing an answer and then seeing how they respond to it. There's like a side thread right now where I've, that is completely optional, where I made a character who is, from what I could tell, part of like an Illuminati like club of like a small handful of robots that seem to be in the shadows orchestrating something. Like you meet this person early on. He's like, hey, I heard that you're going on this expedition. Like this is before you leave. And he's like, would you be interested in talking to my friends about like what you find out there? And they're very secretive about it. Like, you know, if you say, but you have to take a test. Like they give you these responses and these questions, like respond, and then we'll let you know if my members are interested in having you. And funny enough, I don't know if this is like ominous or not, but this robot that approached me about this, its number is 666, which I'm like, I was like, I don't know if they're on the nose of like, is this a bad group, or is it just more of like, it just happens to be 666? That number might not mean anything to them in this world, who knows? But you can opt out. Like they say, like, hey, you don't have to opt out, but if you do, we're gonna need some personal information. Maybe keep an eye on you, and you got to update us what you're doing. I said yes because I want to see where this goes. Yeah. But like periodically, while I'm out there solving puzzles, they'll like message me, because you have a whole like messaging system. Like you have a social media thread where residents will post things about like what's happening, and sometimes you'll respond to those because they'll talk about you directly. But like, what do you think about this new guy? Or they'll ask more sort of like interesting questions that you can choose to chime in on or ignore. And then occasionally I'll get a group call from this like shady group, and they're like, hey, so this is just to give you an idea. I can't give you names of who's in it, but I can tell you what they do. Like one of them is a scholar, one of them's a politician, one of them's like the most ominous thing is that the fifth person is like, it's best you don't know about them. You don't want to know. But you can choose to be like, which one do you want to talk to first? Which one do you think you would jazz with? And I chose the fifth one because I was like, well, I want to see the mystery. And they were like, no, you can't talk. But they were like, but this person would rather talk to you. Would you rather talk to them? So I was like, sure, I'll take that one. But I'm curious to see where that thread goes and what, again, they don't seem like, because again, it seems to be more perspective. Like they might be evil, but you don't know that. It seems like they just have their own self-interest, because you get early on that even though this is sort of a utopia, things have been so perfect or seemingly perfect for a while that and enough of these robots have been along long enough to have developed, because everyone here is capable of independent thought and like art and all this stuff, that you're seeing some of the same sort of the same sort of divisions as you maybe see now. Maybe not as extreme, but it's there. Even if like mundane stuff, like there's one guy that asked me to sign a petition to change the city's power grid to something else, and I declined to sign. So I was like, well, I don't know enough about how this place runs to know what should change, if anything. So I'll get back to you later if I know more. But the storytelling around the edges so far, and just even the audio logs and the notes about, like, again, a lot of just interesting questions about the nature of free will, of humanity, and also the Talos Principle itself, which, for those that don't know, and I'm gonna paraphrase this as much as I can, but like the Talos Principle is a philosophical idea of like, if man makes machines in their image, like pretty much like, what is the difference truly between a man and a machine? If you make a machine that could do the same thing as a man, then is a man just a machine at the end of the day?
Well, the woodchuck would.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm paraphrasing a lot here with that. So apologies if I'm not like 100% on that, but that's like the gist of it, of like, what does that mean? And even just stuff about like I read one log that had me thinking about the nature of extinction and being like, for some reason humanity gets sad about extinction when it's caused by them, but if nature does it, it's okay. And what is that? What does that say about, like, if dolphins would extinct, we would try to stop it because we decided we like dolphins. But if a bacteria went extinct, we wouldn't care because we decided we don't like that. But like, we're still intervening directly with what nature would do. So we would protect the species that maybe just can't compete anymore just because of evolution, but because we like them. But then is that bad to insert that influence in something that would naturally happen? And again, not saying, and there's no like right or wrong answer. It's just raising the question to get you thinking. Mm-hmm. And then also like, if the universe works that way, is it dangerous to assert humanity's influence on the universe, which in itself is more neutral and chaotic? Like things like that. Like even like a one little audio note or like lore note will get you thinking like, oh, I've never been asked that, or maybe not with that angle. And I'll be sitting there like, that's an interesting question. I'm gonna think about that for a while. So on top of like a really nice presentation, I think it's art-wise, it's a nice looking game, and the puzzles so far have been great. And each island has introduced a new mechanic that layers on top of the existing sort of like premise of guiding light beams to nodes in interesting ways. And with the collectathon aspect of like, oh, there's the main puzzles you have to solve, but there's like these optional puzzles that if you solve those, they feed into these golden doors I keep finding, that if I solve enough optional puzzles, I'll be able to open these really elaborate golden doors, and I want to see what's behind there. So I want to kind of do those, and I've done all of them so far. And I genuinely want to see where the story goes. Like, I want to know what the hell is going on with this island, especially because as you get to know your crewmates, they each have their own opinions about like, should we tread lightly here? Like one guy is kind of cautious because for good reason of like, he goes into stuff that's happened of like, maybe we should slow it down and take everything with a grain of salt. And then one person in your team is more adventurous and like, it's our responsibility to find out because it might be for the good of the city back home to know what's going on here, And again, it's like, I don't think either of you are wrong. And as things go on, you're kind of like forming your own opinions of like, what is this dangerous? What we're doing? Are we playing with fire here? Should we have stayed back in our bubble? Is that ultimately safer for the Earth? If we break out and expand, are we susceptible to repeating the mistakes of man? Or have we learned enough? Because they're all aware of how man fell apart. And they always talk about like, oh, the hubris of man kind of led to our destruction. But should we still do that, but do it better than they did? It's a very fascinating game. And the first one was as well. But I'm really digging what they're doing with this so far.
Awesome.
I am mad because I want to play this game now, first of all. Second of all, and this is kind of a broad question, but you talk a lot about how the game like raises a lot of the philosophical questions and kind of leaves like the interpretation up to you. From what you played of the first game, does it seem interested in like coming to some answer in itself by the end of the game, or is it like, are you the one that's kind of guiding that? Like, to me, I feel like if you're gonna raise all these questions, I want to know what the game has to say about those.
So
if it does,
the first game has multiple endings, so I'd say it does in that sense of like if you choose. So like I said, the first game is basically about, are you gonna follow Elohim, this omnipresent voice, like everything does to the letter, yes or no? And if you choose yes or no, there are two completely different endings based on that, and kind of the consequences of those choices, I guess, is sort of like, here's what we think this would lead to. Like I mentioned before, like I think from what I remember the first game, the true ending was going against Elohim, because like that was like the criteria of like, you are now allowed to live with these other robots because you've proven that you are capable of independent thought. Whether that's good or bad, we'll see, but you can do it. You know? And yeah, I'd say I think the first game, like I guess through those endings kind of offers like an answer to that. You know, and so I am thinking about that too, of like, what when I get to the end or maybe some sort of story milestone, what this game has to say for itself about like certain things. Because even now, like I've encountered two weird beings, like the one I mentioned in the beginning that sort of sets you on the course, that are even they are contradicting each other, where the first one invites you to the island and the other one is like, maybe you should turn back, you know. And you're like, and we had a discussion with the group of like, who do we listen to? And like, are they both valid? And again, it's like, it's the thing of like, well, it's more interesting that we have two beings seemingly of the same power scale that are telling us different things. So what do we do with that? You know?
Yeah.
Game sounds
So we'll
cool as
see.
hell.
It's one of those games I think about when I'm not playing, especially if I'm stuck in a puzzle and you give yourself a chance to play it in your mind and go, wait, I should do it this way. Like I said, I've talked a lot about the story, but I think the puzzle design so far is fantastic. And also the game controls well. Like you can move, you can run really fast, which I think is important for something like this, where you're like zipping around, because a lot of the game is moving things where they need to be so that the beams go a certain way. And the fact that you can move as quickly as you can means you can solve a puzzle like that. So it's good. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Awesome. Well, I'm adding that to my Steam wish list right now. Well, cool.
Yeah, sorry, another seemingly great game to throw in the pile to get through in a short amount of time.
Angry.
For real.
Why couldn't you say this game was garbage?
It's exhausting.
So I don't
dude.
have to think about it.
Why can't there be more Super Bomberman R2s in the world, you know?
More golems.
More columns. Crime Boss Rockay City 2, dude.
Bring back Crime Boss.
Well, speaking of bringing things back, Fortnite brought back Chapter 5.
Legendary segue.
Brought back Chapter 5 from Season 1. Fortnite OG is what they're calling it.
I call it OG.
Yeah, Fortnite OG. It is what is
Fortnite
ostensibly a tour through Chapter 1. So for the next week, we're going to be in Chapter 5, which has map locations like Paradise Palms, Greasy Grove, Tilted Towers, Retail Row, Lazy Links. And then it's going to switch to Season 6. And then it's going to do Season 7 and 8. And then Season 9 and 10 throughout the next month or so. And yeah, it is OG Fortnite. There's some updates since Zero Build didn't exist back then. When you play that mode, which I do, there's more zip lines around, because before where you could build to get up hills and stuff, you can't anymore. So you have to rely on like the plungers back in the game. So typically you have the plunger or the portal rift to teleport into the top of the map and parachute down again, as well as other random scattered rifts and zip lines to make sure that you can access all parts of the map. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. This is the new Fortnite season.
So when you say it goes back, does it take away all the stuff they've added, like vehicles?
Yeah.
Is that good? Because I feel like
Well,
when
they
you do a step
routinely vault things in Fortnite.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like weapons will just disappear for months or years, and then they'll show up again. It's kind of like the meta is always changing with Fortnite.
I was wondering, like, is it when you do these sort of like throwback things, the danger is like, oh, it's less fun because the things that you've added made the game objectively better. You know?
I think I've also played it a little bit. I don't think it feels weird because, like Alex said, they do so routinely. Like every season, it's like your favorite gun is probably going to go away, but then you might be introduced or reintroduced to like a different new favorite gun.
Yeah.
And same with like vehicles and mechanics, and like there were grind rails for a minute that were super fun, and those are gone now, and that's fine. I think this is really fun. I do think I feel the age a little bit in terms of the map design because it isn't built for zero build, and there aren't as many vehicles. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff of like, they're just big open plains where like ideally it's like, oh great, you have lots of space to like build stuff here. But if it's zero build, you're just kind of running along for a while. And I think that's fine for the record. And I'm glad that it's only lasting a month, and also that they're doing it as like a way to cycle through all the history. But I'm also glad that this isn't like the next year of Fortnite looks like.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Fortnite OG became a new mode that players can just play.
That would rock.
Because they have hit a lot of records this week ever since Fortnite OG came out. They had the other night 6.1 million concurrent players on Fortnite. Concurrent at the same time.
Wild.
Yeah. They've also, I think they had 44, 45 almost million players that jumped in the day this came out. So it's like very successful, and they're breaking records. And yeah, it's kind of wild to see. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I do miss some of the quality of life things. I miss the perk system, the augment system that they introduced last chapter. I miss some of the NPCs around the map that you can hire, and the gold system. I think Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 4, sorry.
I don't know how you guys remember that.
Yeah. Which is the most recent season before this change.
If I named a random chapter and season, like, would you be able to tell me what that was off the top of your, like, if I said, remember Chapter 3, Season 2, and could you be like, oh yeah, that was where they did
Chapter 3,
this.
Season 2, I believe that was when that was when Zero Build first came out, one season after. And I think is that true? Was that with the Hunter Bows? Was that the Hunters season?
Chapter 3, Season 2?
Yeah.
That was Resistance.
What were the characters?
That Battle Pass had Doctor Strange and the Prowler. That was like the big war. With the...
Ask me another one, Marcus. I might be able to tell you.
I mean, I would say is the short answer, yes, I can do that. Like I was saying, do you guys have that encyclopedic memory of like, yeah, I can tell you exactly which one.
I've been playing for about a year and a half. I started playing when I entered the games industry. I started playing Fortnite, so it was last summer.
That's what gets you.
Alex is the one that has played much longer, though.
I played since season 1 or 2 of the first chapter. And I've taken breaks, of course. I could remember a lot of the first chapter, like the difference between Chapter 6 and Chapter 7.
Hey, I remember like pre-Battle Royale Fortnite, because I was there.
You're there.
I bought it day one when it was
That's the real OG Fortnite.
What we know now is Save the World. I was there literally day one, and I got the founder umbrella because they were like, oh, you were the idiot that played this before
we're here.
Before we saw PUBG and said, hey, what if we just did that?
We're all still here. Yeah, it's fun. I think the most recent season of Fortnite was my favorite one in a long time. I think the game was super strong. I think it was maybe stronger than Fortnite OG, if I'm being honest. Like if I take away the excitement and stuff of going back to this very nostalgic rose-tinted time of Fortnite.
2017 is nostalgic now. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, I guess so.
Some of us were still in high school in 2017.
Wow.
I mean, that's true. What was that, like
That's-
6 years ago? I mean, the Switch came out that year, so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I brought the Switch to study hall.
That's something. Yeah.
Alex is depressed now.
No, I honestly, playing it, I'm like, this is fun. I enjoy the novelty of this. I also kind of hope, because this is like theoretically the last part of chapter 4, because they've kind of started going yearly. I'd be excited if this became more of like a regular thing of like at the end of the year they do some kind of throwback map or season or something.
Right.
Or if, like Alex said, they like integrate it into some more like permanent modes of accessing older maps, I think would do a lot. I mean, honestly, if I was playing the game and like you just had the option of a few maps every time, like I just would play for so much longer. There's so much more variety.
Yeah.
You know what would be great, even though it would be like financial suicide, would be if they're like, you want the real OG, we're gonna season 5, chapter 6, whatever is next. We're taking away battle royale. It's only save the world like it was intended. Like, you're gonna play this, damn it. We're going back to our roots.
It's funny because there's
That's
still
their
a
April
paywall
Fools.
for Save the
Yeah,
World.
but you can still be Goku.
Still be
You
Goku.
can still save the world as Goku and Naruto
Yeah.
and stuff. But yeah.
I dig it. Well, let's start wrapping up the show here. I do want to talk about Warcraft Rumble, but it can wait till next week. Short answer, I guess, is I like it a lot. It's pretty good. If you like Crash Team Rumble, Crash Royale, one of those, you'll like it.
Wait, you mean Crash?
Do you mean Clash Royale?
Oh my
Clash?
God.
I think like Crash
Oh my
Bandicoot? Because
God.
there was that Crash
This is why I'm trying to go
Bandicoot.
because I'm so tired.
It's kind of like
Clash,
Crash Team Racing. If it was
I thought you meant
Clash
that.
Royale,
Okay, like it's like the Crash Bandicoot like MOBA that came out.
Clash
this
of
year.
Clans, that series, the sequel to Clash of Clans.
Right.
And you want Warcraft models and stuff and armies. It's really good. I'm too tired to talk about it this week. It's been a long weekend of working, and getting a bunch of documentaries out. Well, not a bunch, one documentary, and then a bunch
That's
of
a
videos
lot
for
for
our
most
cover
people.
story. I'm ready to go. It's been a great show. But before we go, we have listener questions, so we can't go yet.
We need listener questions music like a jingle.
Yeah, it does.
I'll write it.
That's the kind of funny thing, I think.
That's right. You have a keyboard right there, Charles. Use it.
I have. Well, not right. I don't
You're
think
the
it is.
jingle
I think,
Plugged
man.
in?
I think I've tried to play on the podcast before, and Discord just eats it.
Yeah, we have. We tried to get you to do the Final Fantasy fanfare, I think, right? Victory fanfare.
Did you hear that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did.
All right.
Okay.
That's not
There we go.
copyright. We can use that, right?
I don't know. Actually, someone did. Well, never mind. No, it's a tangent. Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Housekeeping real quick. Single issues are, of course, available for sale. GameStop.com/Game Informer. Go out and grab a magazine for $7.99. It's a great way to support us. You can head over to twitch.tv/Game Informer on Fridays at 2 p.m. to catch our replay series where we are replaying the Neversoft Spider-Man game. Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter. You can follow us on all those places. Follow Marcus at MarcusStewart7. Follow Charles at ChuckDuck365. And you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Go and listen to All Things Nintendo, our weekly Nintendo podcast hosted by Brian Shea. And a shout out to our podcast editor, Matt Storm, aka DJ Stormageddon. Go and listen to their podcasts, Fun and Games, and the Reignite podcast, which is a BioWare focused podcast, which might be interesting for people who are keeping up with N7 Day. But yeah, go check out those podcasts. Let's get into listener questions now. If you want to be part of the show, send us an email, podcast@gameinformer.com, or leave a comment in the Discord, which you get access to by subscribing to us one time on Twitch. This is essentially the part of the show where you influence what we talk about. Just like Troidal Power on Discord, who asks, If you were added as a skin in Fortnite, what bespoke emote or dance would you come up with?
An emote or dance?
My emote, I think it'd be playing guitar. Finger picking on the
is
guitar.
that not in there?
Not finger picking on the guitar.
No
I
air
don't think.
guitar emote? Okay.
No, I want I want them to have the prop of the electric guitar out.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, and he's finger picking and doodling.
I don't know if this is already in there in the dances, but has anyone done the Charleston old school? Can you bring back the Charleston?
is that a thing you specifically are known for, or that's just a thing you want to bring into the game?
The latter. I don't think I've maybe danced the Charleston one. I don't think anyone born after 1970 even knows what the Charleston is. They just heard the dance, but they don't actually they know it's a dance, but if you ask them to do it, they would not know what to do.
Right. And Fortnite would bring it back.
Yeah, let's get the Charleston back in here, make it hot again.
Okay.
And I through me specifically, I'll do it.
Okay, yeah. Charles, what about you?
I really don't know. I'm trying to think of
You guys don't think about this while you're playing Fortnite? Like if I was in this game, I would.
So for me, it's literally the opposite of I have my ring of Fortnite reactions. Has been there for so long that sometimes in other games something will happen and I'll reflexively press my dab button.
I'm gonna do the Carlton dance right here.
Yeah, or it's yes, I got the item I wanted. How do I Gangnam Style in Resident Evil 4? No, I don't know. I think I would be flossing, but it would be kind of an absent-minded flossing. So it's not like I'm on the dance floor and I'm flossing really hard. Mm-hmm. It's I'm waiting for someone to go and I'm just kind of bored. I'm I'll do it on video. We have video.
The sad
video audio listeners. He's standing up.
The sad floss.
Oh yeah, that's you're ready. You're ready for the party to be over.
The casual floss.
Yeah,
I like that.
This one's kind of like a
with the open hand. Yeah, I like that.
It is a bit more like a hula dance when you do it.
There's two. We can have alternate options.
Is the hula dance the progenitor of the floss?
That's a great question.
I don't know.
Who can say?
So that's a backpack kid. He'll know.
Yeah.
He's probably like backpack man at this point. How long now? That was so long ago now, right? I guess 2017.
He's probably my age.
I recently added the Orange Justice back to my emote wheel because I was feeling nostalgic for Fortnite OG.
Can you? I feel like it hasn't been in the shop ever. Did they remove that from the shop?
I don't know.
Anyways.
But I'm a Fortnite OG, you see.
Right.
So
of course.
Buttoning back up my shirt.
Okay, Backpack Kid is a year younger than me.
He has
almost 2 years. He's currently 21, so he's drinking age.
Oh, so Backpack Kid getting.
He was born 3 months after 9/11.
You can see Alex's eyes right now, audio listeners. Are just he's processing this information.
Hey man, it's wild.
Shout out to Backpack Kid. Hope he.
Friend of the show.
I hope he hasn't become a problem.
That's true. I hope you remain offline as much as possible.
Living better than all of us.
Yeah. Quilgrim on Discord asks, which game would be the most fun to play if you discovered what you were controlling is actually happening in real life? A la Ender's Game. For example, you learn that when you're playing the Age of Empires, you were actually directing entire civilizations to fight each other in wars.
I don't want that. That's not good.
I'm going to say Nintendogs. Can you imagine getting super attached to a dog in Nintendogs, and then one day you wake up and it's like, Charles, it's your Nintendog.
So when you play Nintendogs, are you controlling the dog in the real world?
You're the one caring for the dog.
Yeah, you don't control the dog.
They'd have some kind of robot caretaker, and then it would turn out the dog was real.
Okay.
I mean, I think the correct answer is The Sims.
I think
I mean,
that's
that
arguable.
could get horrifying really quick. I say that's a slippery slope. I guess it depends on what kind of player you are.
Or what kind of human you are, what kind of person you are.
I just saw a TikTok clip of The Sims of a person had just given birth to a baby, and the father of the baby, had just asked to move in, and she was like, "Finally, we're starting a family," and then he immediately murdered her. Like, immediately murdered her, and it's like, oh, that's terrible. I would hate if that was.
That's
real.
the world you want to live in, Alex.
The character did that, or the player murdered?
The character.
No, not real life.
It's not a sociopath. I'm just saying the randomness level.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I
Many
want that to
variables.
happen, Marcus.
Okay. Well,
I'll have the
That's
blood
the-
on my hands.
actually, you do the thing where you just remove doors and trap people and just wall.
Yeah, I just want to be a
rooms forever.
menace. Like, I moved the shed by 2 feet.
And everyone in your world's like, God works in mysterious ways. All of them annoying.
It's like, oh, the bath towel rack has moved to the opposite wall now.
Man.
They just
You
think
know
there's a
what I want?
poltergeist, really. That would be me.
Yes.
A
Still
home
terrifying.
renovation poltergeist.
Like, that doesn't make it any better. But I mean, probably like a good cooking game, because then the food would be real, right? Like if I play Monster Hunter World and talk to Meowscular Chef, who makes some real good looking food, like, will I get that food based on this question? Like,
I feel like
makes,
you're overlooking the fact that you would have a talking cat, access to a talking cat.
I mean, that's like
Who
a
cares about
bonus.
the food?
I mean, yeah, because then he would be like my personal chef, right? Like, oh, not only is he a cool talking cat, but he cooks for me, and it's always amazing. So yeah, I would bring him. Like, it would save me grocery shopping, because I would just get the ingredients from the game,
Okay,
and then
yeah.
he would make it, so I don't have to actually buy real world food. I just do it all in the game.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it's good on the wallet too.
I guess money-wise, like any game where you can hack large amounts of money.
Actually, yeah, that's probably the real answer.
Watch Dogs 3.
Yeah.
Like, what if in Yakuza Like a Dragon, that company that I ran, like, I could just reap the benefits from that, right?
Yeah.
Ichiban Holdings, and just be like a gazillionaire, because I did that whole thing and was like super rich by the end of that. So I could, yeah, that's probably like the smart answer. What are we thinking with all these whimsical choices? We should just be making money.
JHerb24 on Discord asks, what's one studio you feel is doing innovative / great work that flies under the radar? Are there any games in particular coming out in the next year you can't wait to try?
I think this is relevant because of recent news, but Digital Eclipse, who is the team that did Atari 50, they just did the making of Karateka, and they've done a lot of those. Like, they're pretty much known for like restoring and remastering classic games. Like they did the Disney Afternoon Collection, which was really good. They did the Mega Man Legacy Collection, I think the first one at least. Yeah, they're like, Atari just acquired them like earlier, or like are planning to acquire them.
Yeah, pretty big.
But yeah, I feel like they don't get enough mainstream love for that stuff. Like, I think especially Atari 50, for like not even just like the restoration, but like the documentary stuff, like interviewing all those like old school Atari guys that, you know, to be honest, they're not going to be around for much longer. And like, you don't really see that kind of stuff in the game industry enough, especially for like a big mainstream, or maybe not mainstream, but like a big sort of like project like that isn't like an independent thing, like a no clip or something, you know, like something that a studio is like, no, let's talk to these guys and get this like candid like footage and responses about like what it was like making these games. And like the making of Karateka, also doing that same thing of sitting down with Jordan Mechner and is doing this very unique approach to a documentary about like one game, is like really cool.
Yeah. Well, we lost Charles at the tail end of this episode. He's gone.
Yeah, he didn't think it was as cool. I
Yeah.
guess,
Well, shall we wrap up here then, Marcus?
yes, Charles had to dip suddenly, guys.
Yeah, he's gone. He actually, the Sims thing was real. And
yeah. Well, I mean, did you have an answer for this question before we wrap up?
Man,
You want to shout out?
I mean, I'd just like to shout out Arcane.
Sure.
Even though, I mean, I reviewed Redfall, I didn't like it, but I'm so excited to see what they do next. I think they are innovative and do great work, and hope that I enjoy their next work more than I did their last. But I think that I think in our circle they get the credit, but I think in a lot of senses they are slept on sometimes. But
Yeah. I hope that Dishonored 3 thing we saw in that leaked Microsoft doc is more than just a what if we did this? Yeah, I hope that's something that is got some fire behind it.
me too. All right, well, let's get out of here, Marcus. Thanks everybody for listening this week, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye guys.